For centuries, the United Kingdom stood as one of the great centers of Christian faith in the world. Its monarchs were crowned in Christian ceremonies. Its laws, traditions, and culture were deeply shaped by the church. And the Church of England remained at the very center of national life. But today, something has changed. Church attendance has collapsed. Many historic cathedrals sit nearly empty. And more people in the UK now claim no faith at all. So what happened to Christianity in Britain? Tonight, we'll talk with a man who's watched this spiritual shift up close and who believes God may still be writing another chapter for the United Kingdom. Don't go away. My guest tonight has spent years watching the spiritual changes taking place across the United Kingdom. Pastor Les Wheeldon is a missionary, author, and Christian leader who has ministered to people across Britain during a time of massive cultural and religious change. As church attendance declines and secularism continues to grow, Les believes the story of Christianity in the UK is far from over. He joins me tonight to talk about faith, history, evangelism, and whether spiritual renewal is still possible in modern Britain. And Les, I'm not afraid to admit it, I love watching the royal weddings, the coronations, the great hymns, the choirs, the spiritual readings, all of it feels so deeply Christian. And yet that doesn't seem to be reflected in the daily spiritual life of many people in the UK. So Les, what exactly is happening?
Well, you're completely right that there's been a huge change in the last 120 years. Church attendance at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century was very high, probably 50% in England, 90% in Wales. And now it's down to 15%, 12%. Very different, very different.
Yeah, you're a native. Were you born and raised in London or in the London area?
I was born and raised in Derbyshire, which is in the centre of the UK, of England, and I was brought up in a family that was not Christian. My parents were not Christian. They didn't go to church. They had me baptized in the Anglican Church at the age of 10 as an afterthought. I think they thought that they'd made a mistake and they should have me baptized. So I was baptized just as a ritual, didn't mean anything to them or to me. At the age of 10. I came to Christ then through a friend at college, and he witnessed to me. He was the son of a Baptist pastor, and his name was Malcolm Love. I love that name. So his father was Pastor Love, and he preached the gospel. And so I heard the gospel through him, and he had formed a little group at school, high school, and I remember he played recordings from Billy Graham, and I heard the gospel through Billy Graham and my friend as well, other things that he said, and I gave my life to Christ at the age of 18.
Wow, that is great. That is great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you head right into the ministry, or did you?
Well, after that, I went to Oxford University, which was a great privilege. It's a great institution. And when I went there, the spiritual life at Oxford was very vibrant. There was a very vibrant Christian union. And the day I arrived, I was met by a Christian who welcomed me, and other Christians I know. I remember the leader of the Christian Union. There was this meeting of freshmen, and we all sat in a room with about 150 of us in Keble College, Oxford. And everybody stood up and said where they came from. He stood up and said, "My name is Andrew Simpkins. I'm a Christian. And if anybody wants to talk about it, you're welcome to see me in my room." And there was a really bold witness and a vibrant Christianity there at Oxford University. And we had great speakers come to the Christian Union, Martin Lloyd-Jones, and also John Stott, people you may have heard of.
That's a marvelous and wonderful thing, brother, that you had that kind of exposure and certainly the love and support of Christian people at that early age in your life, both in high school and college. It's just a wonderful thing.
Yes.
Did you go to seminary after that, or after Oxford?
Well, I met the Lord very powerfully at Oxford in a deeper way. I was filled with the Holy Spirit there, and that really changed my life, introduced me to a deep prayer life. And then I had time abroad. I lived and worked in Germany for a year. I studied modern languages, and having a lot of time, I had so much time there in that job I had in Germany. I gave myself to prayer and the studying the Bible myself. And I began to preach, and I cut my teeth, if you like, preaching over there in Germany, and then afterwards in England in different places. And then when I was left university, after about a year, I had a bit of a crisis with going through. I had a job, but the job was really in armaments. And although I'm not anti-military, anything like that, I felt that it wasn't my calling to give myself to a job that was making armaments. And so I had to leave that job because I felt the Lord was calling me. And so my father said to me, if you leave that job, you leave my home. And so I had to make a clear choice, and I left that job. And on my journey next, I was invited to go to serve the Lord in Cameroon by a German missionary society. And that was I was 24 years old and went out partly through a Christian literature ministry to help expand that ministry, but also to preach and start churches in new areas. I was fluent in French and German, and I could start a church in the French-speaking part of Cameroon.
Mm. What a change from
Yeah,
building
huge
armors.
change.
Yeah, yeah. But God managed to use you always. He manages to use all of us, but He used you in sending you to Cameroon and used your ability to speak French to His glory, which is a real blessing. How long were you in Cameroon?
I was there from 1979, and then I got married in 1980, and then we were there till 1987. But I have visited Cameroon every year since. We hold annual conferences. I will be there again in June for an annual conference. And the work has really expanded and grown, and it's a delight to see.
Yeah.
And the work in Africa, in Cameroon and so on is very different. It's fresher, it's newer, but it's also not always as impacting this lifestyle of people. I see that in countries like Cameroon is next to Nigeria, and it's very similar. So you can have large churches, but then you can have deep moral problems and issues in those churches because it's coming out of a culture where there was no morality. So it doesn't have the Christian heritage that, say, a country like Britain has.
Yeah, yeah. So then did you head back to the United Kingdom after your time in Cameroon?
Yes, and I pastored a church in Manchester from 1987 to 1991, and then went down to Epsom in London area and pastored there for many years, and also afterwards latterly developed quite an itinerant ministry. I've been to 70 countries.
My.
And I'm very privileged to see the work of the Lord in many countries.
Yeah.
All over Africa, also in Asia. I've been to Russia 15 times.
Wow.
And all over Russia.
Wow.
So very privileged to do a lot of traveling and preach the gospel in many different countries.
So you've seen, of course, the political changes around the world, but certainly in your own country, certainly in the United Kingdom, you've seen the changes. And the two main parties, I guess, would be the Conservatives and the Labour Party, although I know there are more parties than those two, but they would almost rival the Democratic and Republican parties that we have in the United States, I would say. Is that right?
That's right, but there is a huge difference. In America, I've noticed over the years that, say, when Ronald Reagan came into power, one of the first things he did was pass a law about abortion. When Bill Clinton came into power, he passed a law allowing gay people to serve in the military. And then when George Bush came into power, George Bush Jr., again, he reversed certain laws. So there's this there's this embracing of certain Christian values by the Republican Party, and we don't have that difference. There is no party in Britain that I know, no political party that has members of parliament that represents anti-abortion stance or any of those kind of issues. So there is a big difference there. We have a slight change coming up because the Reform Party, which is a new party, which is really standing.
Is that Nigel Farage's
largely,
party? Is that Nigel Farage?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And they are very anti-immigration. And they have a wing of their party that is Christian. And in recent marches and protests that they've held in London, they've held Christian banners and saying that Britain is a Christian country and we need to return to our Christian values. But it's rather more political than spiritual. It's difficult to see where one begins and the other ends. I'm not saying that they are not spiritual at all, but it's more to do with the history of the country and going back to Christian roots, but not so much spiritual roots, but as Christian cultural roots.
Yeah. But what about that's a big difference. I agree. What about, so you were saying a little bit earlier about the percentages, how they've changed from the time when you were a younger person, where, a huge percentage of the population ascribe to the Christian faith, you consider themselves to be Christian, followers of Christ, evangelical, many of them, and in the UK and Wales, and now those numbers are much, much smaller. I mean, just obviously a significant minority of the people identify as Christian, which means that the overwhelming majority are what? They're like.
That's a very good point, and most of them are, I would say, probably 50% are atheists or secular. It's very difficult to identify what people, how people see themselves. Many people just have a materialist view that this life is all there is, but it's not that they've embraced a philosophy of atheism. It's just a kind of a materialist view of the world, that we want to embrace a higher standard of living, aim for a higher standard of living, and that's basically all there is. And then some people who do that might have had a Christian christening, and they might have identified themselves as Christian. Even I think Richard Dawkins said he was culturally Christian, by which he meant that was his upbringing, his values, some of his values, but that, of course, he's an atheist. Quite remarkable. So it's difficult to say what people themselves see as their own philosophy of life. But in the end, it comes to the same thing, that they're largely materialist and atheist, and don't go to church and don't practice any form of religion. The majority.
Billy Graham did several crusades to England, and was well received, and I know that scores of people came to Christ through those crusades there as well as here in the United States. Is there anything like that happening now? I mean, what are the prospects for Christianity and for people coming to Christ in the UK? I mean, aside, is the only hope for somebody to do a crusade, or for evangelicals to launch some kind of a campaign to win the hearts of people back to Christ, or what's your sense of it? Or is it just a smaller, slower?
Good question.
Is it smaller and slower?
I have a feeling that the age of crusades, like Billy Graham crusades, has passed in some measure. I think that the British are very private. And that is why I think, probably one of the reasons why the Lord prompted Holy Trinity Brompton to start the Alpha Course. Because the Alpha Course has reached millions of British people and millions of people worldwide. I think this year is going to be the largest number of people last year, 2025, took the Alpha course, and this year will be even more. I think it's 200 and something thousand took the course last year, and a lot of them from Generation Z. And I think that's where God has reached into the homes of people. And things have been happening. I believe the Lord is able to inspire people. I think if we had a speaker like Billy Graham, unusually gifted, of course we have J. John. You've heard of J. John. He's a great evangelist. But the real impact is coming through the Alpha course. And that is, of course, in people allowed to get into a home, feel very safe, have a meal, watch a video. And those videos really do present Christ and the gospel. And they've reached into countless homes, but also into prisons. I remember back in 2003 or something like that, it was the Labour government. And the Alpha course was being offered into prisons. And the then Home Secretary, I don't know what the equivalent of is in America, but the Home Secretary, he approved Alpha for prisons because he could see that the gospel was changing people in a way that nothing else was. And I remember if your listeners could search for a testimony by a man named Darrell Tunningley. He's interviewed by Nicky Gumbel, and he just tells his story how he came to Christ in an Alpha course in prison in Britain. And that story is repeated thousands. If those people were coming to meetings in the open air, we would have called it the most massive revival since Wesley. But of course they weren't. They were coming, maybe 5, 10, 20 people coming to an Alpha course in a home and giving their lives to Christ very quietly and without much public fanfare. So we could call it a quiet revival.
Is it not possible to do evangelism in the UK, given the fact that people are private?
Oh, it's certainly possible. I think Franklin Graham has he's never been refused access to Britain, and he's allowed to preach and so on. But I did remember that he was refused permission to use a public building because he needed council permission. And the council was very left-wing and did not like his stance on Islam and other issues, gay issues. He'd been very, I think, provocative, and maybe that wasn't entirely wise, because my own view about when we talk about these issues, we may have opinions, but really our heart is to win people and to love people. We love everybody. As Christians, we love everybody. And that's one of the great marks of the Christian faith, that we love Jews, Palestinians, we love Muslims, we love Buddhists. We're not racist, and if we are at all, we repent of it, because we are seeking to love everybody on the planet. But but in his case, I think he was refused access to a public building, but he's allowed to preach.
Yeah.
And the same thing can happen because we are a multicultural society, and there are sensitive areas. And I think that all preachers need to do that. But yes, you can go on the street and preach. I know several street preaching ministries in Liverpool and Reading. Churches go regularly onto the street on Saturdays and present the gospel, and they're quite completely free to do so.
Yeah, we've been talking with Pastor Les Wheeldon about the spiritual and cultural changes reshaping the United Kingdom, a nation with deep Christian roots but growing secularism. When we come back, I'll ask Les whether the new data showing young men returning to church and searching for God gives them hope for Britain's future. Don't go away.
Learn more about Joe Watkins and the mission of this program at joewatkins.net. And tell Joe what you thought about today's program in the comment box. Joe Watkins' State of Independence is a production of Lighthouse TV, positively different. Made possible in part because of the support of viewers like you. This program is a production of Lighthouse TV. Positively different. Made possible in part because of the support of viewers like you.
My guest tonight is Pastor Les Wheeldon, joining us from London, England. We've been talking about the state of the church in the United Kingdom, a nation with deep Christian roots, but also growing secularism. But Les, there's now real evidence, which is good, suggesting young men, both here in America and even the UK, are returning to church, or at least open to the questions about God and faith. Is that what you're seeing, and is it real?
Definitely. I minister in a number of churches, and I'm connected with a number of churches, and they have seen a huge growth and a lot of young people coming in, and some of them coming with great problems from the drug scene and different things, but some just coming because they're curious. They feel the emptiness of secularism. Scientific materialism hasn't produced the answers that they thought. And so there is a large number of people. Now, these statistics are contested, and you'll see the sides presented. Some people say that up to 30% of that generation, or 20% of that generation, are actively seeking spiritual answers. Other statistics question that. But I would say that even if the statistics are not 100% accurate, there is some movement. There is a movement among the Generation Z. And we can see that in the Alpha course, because they also have seen a huge uptake from young people in that generation. So it's very, very encouraging. I can think of several churches which are really growing, especially in that age group. And we have annual conferences every year, and the number of people under 40 is about 50%. So that's very encouraging. We have a conference maybe over 500, and half of them are under 40 years old. It's great. It's very encouraging.
Yeah. And it's spiritual, not political, which is
Yes.
encouraging to hear. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that one could forget about our generation now. That when I say our generation, of course, I'm not Generation Z, but when I speak we who are alive today, we can say that if a person says I am a Christian, it means something. Maybe 60 years ago, in the post-war era, people would have said, yeah, I'm Christian, but they wouldn't have gone to church. They wouldn't have embraced Christian values or even morals. But today, if somebody says I'm a Christian, it's because they have thought it through, and they embrace the values and the teachings of Jesus Christ. It means much more when they say they're a Christian.
Yeah.
And I'm also aware that statistics are, what's the quote from Benjamin Disraeli? And I think Mark Twain quoted it. He said, lies, and statistics. And statistics can be made to say anything. But if you look at the power of Christ to change lives, now that's something. So, for example, that testimony I told you about on YouTube, that man, that criminal who was saved. Now, his life was completely turned around. He left a life of crime. And he's now working as, I think, a youth pastor in a place called Runcorn, England. So that's what I really look for, because you could say that I think in some states of America, there is a huge number of people say they're Christian, but if you then dig deeper into the moral fabric of those states in America, you sometimes find that the divorce rate is high, and other rates of things are not changed by the Christian, by the claim to be Christian. So we need to look at two things, both the claim to be Christian, what it means, but also the change of life that accompanies it. And I believe we are seeing something really genuine. People are really being changed, and Christ is getting hold of lives, and people are really developing a Christ-like character and entering into discipleship.
Wonderful, brother. Wonderful. Well, my special guest tonight has been Pastor Les Wheeldon, missionary, author, and Christian leader from the United Kingdom. We've been talking about the state of faith in Britain and the future of the church and whether a real spiritual awakening may still be possible. Obviously it is. If you'd like to learn more about his ministry, visit leswheeldon.org. I'll be right back with our great producer, Jeff Coleman.
You're watching Joe Watkins' State of Independence on Lighthouse TV. Positively different. Share your comments about today's program in the comment box at joewatkins.org. Share your comments about today's program in the comment box at joewatkins.org.
For centuries, British kings and queens have been crowned in ceremonies filled with scripture, prayer, hymns, and Christian symbolism. At the heart of the coronation is a simple reminder that even a king must ultimately bow before a higher king. That's a powerful image. But in the end, Christian faith isn't really about what a king or a queen or even a nation says with its lips. It's about whether we personally confess Jesus Christ in our hearts, whether we trust him, follow him, and surrender our lives to him. I hope tonight's conversation with Pastor Les Wheeldon challenged you to think about your own faith, not as a cultural label or a family tradition, but as a real relationship with the living God. If you have a moment, drop me a message at joewatkins.org. I'd love to hear from you. From America's first capital, Philadelphia, I'm Joe Watkins. For Jeff Coleman and the entire team here at Lighthouse TV, thanks so much for spending time with us. We look forward to seeing you again next week.
To replay and share this episode of State of Independence or visit our library of past programs, visit joewatkins.org and subscribe to our YouTube channel. This program is a production of Lighthouse TV. Positively different. Made possible in part because of the support of viewers like you.
Watch Lighthouse TV wherever you go. Available on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV. You can view our in-house studio productions on demand, or watch what's on the station right now with our 24/7 live stream. Search Lighthouse TV online on your streaming device, or go to our website for more information. Visit lighthousetv.org to stay connected. There you can find out what's currently on the air and coming up. How to watch in your area on cable, satellite, broadcast, or streaming devices. Watch past programs or our live stream. Follow us on social media and learn more about the station, our hosts, and our programming. Lighthouse TV, positively different.